there, writer friends. It's Wednesday afternoon. I am fresh out of a session with the Sovereign Writers Circle. And as I love to do, I want to fill you in on a little bit of the ground that we explored today. And today, we talked a little bit about that which is so often considered unspeakable. Because how often do women gather, or people of any kind, because of course we know that we do not strictly limit our understanding of sexuality and gender and what sexes do and are capable of. But in our conversation today in the Writers' Circle, which is of all women who identify as women, we talked about something that women do not necessarily speak about all that often, which is our stories of menstruation, our stories of moon blood, our stories of our periods, or whatever it is that we choose to tell, we choose to call this particular cycle that many women, not all, go through for many years, and what it means to bleed or not to bleed at various points in your life. And it felt really important to dive into this today, because though the Writers' Circle's been in existence for nearly 3 years, I realized though I write 2 writing prompts every Wednesday for the group, we'd never actually taken this particular topic head on. I have certainly written many a prompt while heavy with my own moon time and definitely feeling like I just wanted to be in the red tent and that doing much of anything was a challenge, because that's how my own cycle works, where I really wish that I could hide out for a couple of days each month. But I hadn't yet taken the opportunity to speak directly to, what is it like for you, dear writer? Dear woman, what is your story of when you first got your period, when you felt like you would never get your period, when you struggled with it for years, when you learned that it was a sacred thing and started calling it moon blood and moon flow, when you celebrated the fact that it was gone, when you mourned the fact that that cycle was done? These are all important, intimate stories to tell. And it was funny when we closed today, I really said, thank you for being here today for our women's circle, which it isn't, it's a writer's circle, but we came together as women with very varied, but a set of shared experiences. And I want to celebrate that in the midst of celebrating all the different ways in which we celebrate a diversity of experiences, and understand that members of the transgender community, for example, have a very different experience with blood and bleeding and are still women. And that there are men, people who identify as men, who are still struggling with menstruation and may not want to be. That is all incredibly valid and true. And so is the experience of saying, this is what I have grown into and this is what I've grown through, and sitting down to talk about it as something that has shaped us. Because these spaces in which we can really talk about this was my physical experience and how it affected my mind and my heart are really valid and really beautiful. And I think that we are all called to write with our guts in whatever that might mean. And for me as a woman, that absolutely means that I write differently certain times of the month than I do others. I find that my prose is a little more like poetry, and the sentences are longer and windier. And often the stories don't necessarily stick together. It's that my attention is different in this time of the month. And it's so easy to squander that attention, to keep looking away, to check the latest Twitter feeds and the outrage and the madness, because in this time when I personally want to be most inward and inward focused, it's also the hardest, because my brain is most likely to be skittering and scattering. And over our last 10, 15, 20 years of digital lifestyle, I've learned to use that attention to skitter and scatter over through various websites and follow various status updates. This is just something that I'm noticing today as I look to say, how am I treasuring my own attention? How am I focusing my own energy at any given time of the month, but especially at a time when I am bleeding with the moon? So if you are someone who menstruates, who has in the past, for whom it's part of your story, either because of its presence or its absence, I encourage you to write into that today, to write into the guts of your own story, into the belly of part of who you are. Who you are as a woman who bleeds, as a being who bleeds, does not define you, but it's a valid and interesting part of who you are, because you'll notice there are patterns there. There are stories there. There are ways in which that regular or not so regular experience has shaped you. We live in a culture where it's difficult to talk about moon blood. We live in a culture where ads for sanitary napkins show us blue liquid. What? But that makes it all feel safer and more sanitary, opposed to something natural and real and red and true like blood. What if we told the truth about how horrible it feels, how amazing it feels, about what becomes possible, about how we feel changed, about how we don't feel changed and we don't understand what the big deal is? What if you told your true story? What if you told somebody else? And what if you didn't tell anyone at all? And what if that really didn't matter? Because what mattered was that you gave yourself a chance to look deep within. In a time when everything is so scattered and crazy and everybody is flinging all kinds of invectives and we're thinking about the big picture and the small picture and everything in between, and it's just a mess. What if you gave yourself permission to look within, to hold on to your own belly and ask her for her stories? What if you let them flow? You rode all of those metaphors and suggestive verbs and you enjoyed it. See where it takes you. Right on, right on. I'll see you next Wednesday. And I'm always here if you want to share your stories. And if you want to join us in the Sovereign Writer Circle for prompts like these and others that take you into the guts of who you are, to the heart, to the soul, to the stories you want to tell for yourself, the stories you want to tell to the world, then I'll drop a link below. The Sovereign Writer Circle's welcoming a few more members next month. Blessings. Right on, right on.